Greetings, everyone. I am your host, Jabari Lamb, and here is our co-host, Mr. Holicism, who is the founder of the BAI. Jabari Lamb, and here is our co-host, Mr. Holicism, who is the founder of the BAI. Jabari Lamb, and here is our co-host, Mr. Holicism, who is the founder of the BAI. So we have a little echo there, but don't worry, Hollop's going to get that taken care of. So don't worry. There is a little echo in the background, but don't worry, he'll get that fixed. So we have a special live stream for y'all. Today, we're going to be talking about the Liberian presidential election. And as you see in the link of the title of our video, it says, "What does the election of Joseph Boakai mean for Liberia?" For those who do not know or maybe under a rock, Joseph Boakai has won the 2023 Liberian presidential election against former incumbent George Weah. Now, George Weah was the president of Liberia. He was governing the country from 2017 to 2023. He took the reins of power from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was the previous president from 2005 to 2017, and he faced Joseph Boakai and ended up beating him in the runoff. This time around, Joseph Boakai would be successful in beating George Weah, having about 50.6% of the vote to George Weah's 49.4% of the vote. Before we dive deep in, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you comment down below. Tell us what you think. And of course, sign up to the website at baioafricstan.org/register. Want to give a huge shout out to all the subscribers that we've had. We've reached over the 2,000 mark, and now we're at 2.27. As of today, we were at 2.26, but we're now at 2.27. So we are making progress. Let's get to 3,000. Let's get to 10,000. And we're going to keep bringing out this content as it relates to Liberia, as it pertains to what's going on with African Americans, so that we can get our viewers more informed, educated, and interested and passionate about Liberia. So with that, we're going to dive into the presidential election. So as I stated, Joseph Boakai got 50.6% of the vote compared to George Weah's 49.4% of the vote. Now, this is based on the results that came out from the National Elections Commission. So if we have right here, we have the National Election Commission 2023 elections results portal. That is the Republic of Liberia, also known as the NEC. So as you guys can see here, this is the total number of political parties in Liberia, the number of voter registered, voting precincts, and polling places. So as I stated before, Joseph Boakai had received 50.6%, 50.64% precisely, or 814,481 votes to George Weah's 793,914 votes, or 49.63% of the vote. Now, as we're going to break it down by county, we're going to start with Grand Cape Mount, and we're going to finish it off with Maryland, which is at the southern tip near Ivory Coast. So as you see here, Joseph Boakai wins in Grand Cape Mount. He won in Barpaloo County. He won in Lofa County. He won in Bomi County. He won in Montserrado. He won all the northern region. Markibi. And then Way gets an exception. He wins in Bone County. He also wins in Grand Bassa, Riversess, and then Boakai wins in Nimba, and then of course George Weah runs it up in the southern region, as most Southeasterners voted for George Weah because he was a Southeasterner. So George Weah wins 90% of the votes in Grand Jita. He wins 83.3% of the votes in Sino. He wins 91% in Grand Cru, which makes sense. It's his home county. River G, he wins 80% of the vote. In Maryland, he wins 83.6% of the vote. And then, of course, we have Grand Bassa and Riversess. That also went for him. And then, boom, Nimba is the exception. So, as you guys can see, Nimba and Montserrado have the largest number of votes. They are the largest counties in Liberia in terms of population. Montserrado is the largest. It has close to 1 million people. And then Nimba is the second largest with about between 500 and 600,000 people in that county. So that is election results that happen in by county, who won which counties. So we're gonna basically have a discussion on what is a Boakai presidency going to mean. By the way, this was a major success for Liberia. Liberians need to give themselves a huge round of applause. They need to give themselves a pat on the back because this election was a free and fair election. It was completely funded by Liberians. This was a peaceful election. There was no election violence. And it got the notable attention of the likes of Bola Tinubu. It got the likes of Peter Obi and Nigerians who were commemorating how, or really just thanking how peaceful and transparent the Liberian elections were, and that they can hopefully transmit it into their own elections in Nigeria with INEC. And because as people know, Nigeria's election system is different than Liberia's election system. So Liberia's election, you have two rounds. You have the first round, and then you have the runoff. The first round, you have as many political candidates and as many political parties can run. As you guys see, based on the NEC, you have 46 political parties. You can have as many politicians run in the first round. The two that get the most votes are going to have the runoff. And whoever wins the runoff wins the presidency. A democratically run system. Better than America's electoral college system, which is a fraud of a democracy. It's not a democracy at all. It's a two-party particracy as by official definition. And of course, Nigeria's is who wins the most regions, most states. So in the case of Nigeria's presidential election, Bola Tinubu didn't even get 40% of the vote. He only got about 36% of the vote, but yet he still got to be the president of Nigeria because Nigeria is based on who wins the most amount of states in the federal republic, not who wins the majority vote, which is, of course, deeply problematic. So again, huge shout out to Liberia for their presidential election, what we were able to accomplish and what we were able to achieve. So I've been speaking for 7 minutes, so I'm gonna let my co-host, the AKA Mr. List System, Dr. Hollip, speak on this. What does he think a Boakai presidency is gonna be? What are his thoughts about George Weah conceding defeat, and where we go from there?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I really don't have a whole lot to say because I haven't done a deep dive into any of this stuff like you have and the rest of my members in the BAIO and BIO Liberia. But I will say that it seems like there's going to be a peaceful transition of power. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. George Weah did concede defeat. In one of his concession speeches, he says that he may have lost the CDC, which stands for the Congress of Democratic Change, said that they lost, but that Liberia has won. He congratulated President-elect Joseph Boakai, and then he said that the CDC will eventually have their time. That is a good sign that there's going to be a peaceful transition of power, that there's not going to be any election chaos. So that is a good sign for us to celebrate, and we can sort of have a sigh of relief because, of course, just 6 years ago, back in 2017, there was a lot of concern that there was going to be a lot of destabilization, that there was going to be election violence, and that has not happened. So we've had about 3 elections that have had a peaceful transition of power. We had Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and then we have George Weah, and then we have Joseph Boakai. A quick interesting fact, this is the 3rd time that George Weah has actually run for office. He ran for office back in 2005. He lost to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. He then ran back in 2017. He won in 2017, and then he lost in 2023. So George Weah has quite an interesting history in politics, going back 18 years. He, of course, for those who may not know, he was a notorious soccer player. He was well known in the European leagues. He's considered one of the greatest soccer players in history. So, of course, and he would help during the Liberian Civil War. He would sort of help ease tensions. So, of course, he was a major figure for people to look up, especially younger Liberians at the time. So, that's what we have right now in terms of peaceful transition to power. And, who the candidates were.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Like when you look at the landscape of everything, I think that that's the best that we can hope for. Is I don't think there's going to be radical change, but at least there's not chaos and there's a peaceful transfer of power. I think that's a good thing. That's like the silver lining and everything.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think that it shows what Liberia has accomplished. We have now inspired African leaders across the continent. We had, even though I disagree with him, we have people like Bobby Wine commemorating the Liberian presidential election. Again, you had Peter Obi, who won in Lagos, who was notoriously popular amongst the youth. We've had African leaders in West Africa, ECOWAS, the African Union congratulated. So this is a good sign for us. This is a huge good
Yeah,
sign.
definitely. Definitely. What do you know? Like how much do you know about the new president?
So I know a little bit about Joseph Boakai, and Joseph Boakai, I would say he's I would say he's better than George Weah. By the way, I see the Liberian Leadership Academy shirt. I'm gonna probably put mine on in a few minutes, so don't worry, y'all. We're gonna be matching soon. Uh, but as it pertains to Joseph Boakai was the vice president under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So again, he has political experience. He has political experience for quite some time. He was the one who was notorious for saying in Arizona that Barack Obama is not the first African American president, that there were 10 African American presidents before Barack Obama. He was the one who brought up Joseph Jacobs Roberts, who brought up Stephen Allen Benson, all the way up until Garrison Walter Gibson, who was the last African American president born in the United States. He is a bit on the older side. He is about 82, 83 years old, so he's in his 80s.
Mm.
He I did see a meme where people were referring to Joseph Boakai as Sleepy Joe, which is which is fairly interesting. Joe Biden and then Joseph Boakai, so we got two Sleepy Joes. But I would definitely say he's more fit for the office. I would say has more political experience than George Weah, who was not really that I would say adept for this position. We've seen what he has done these last 6 years in terms of there being an economic crisis. There was fuel shortages. You had people protesting him because of how he was running the economy, and of course, there's corruption running like wildfire. So I would say Joseph Boakai is an upgrade. I'm not expecting significant change, but we should expect a little bit of a steering on the course.
Right, right. You know, the political game is really strange. It's like you have to take the best of the options that you have, and the fact that it's peaceful, I think, is the most important thing. Like stability is the most important thing.
Indeed. And as Michael McGarry, one of our great members, we hope to see you on. He has a long political history. He was Minister of the Agriculture in the 80s. So Boakai has had a history in politics. I mean,
And
in 2017, I wanted a peaceful transition of power. I was just getting into Liberian history at the time. I was just turning 18. I was 17, officially turning 18 when the Liberian presidential election were happening because they happened in October. And of course, my birthday is October 14th. That was in 2017. And I preferred Boakai to win because I really didn't. I wasn't a fan of George Weah. I preferred Boakai to win back in 2017, but it wasn't made out to be. But this time around, he gets his shots, and there was enough people that switched their votes or came out to vote for Boakai that Wade did not get the majority votes, and you know he's here, and that's a good sign for us. I
hey,
would say
Michael.
that this is a democratic system. Majority rules. There's no electoral college as they do here in America, where you could win the popular vote and lose. There, you win the popular vote, you win. So just want to
And
give that
Michael,
a
if you
great.
can, if you can, Michael, jump on. I put the link in the WhatsApp and in the Signal group.
So it is definitely a huge upgrade in our democratic system. And I just want African Americans who are watching this or who are eventually going to be watching this that is what makes Liberia unique and something that we could build on. Is we actually have a democratic system. Liberia is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but Liberians in the diaspora, Liberians in Lofa and Bong and Nimba can all build on the fact that we have a democratic system, a majority rule, and that the majority have their voices heard. And it makes third parties viable. Whereas here in the United States, it's not politically viable. So, that is one thing that Boakai maybe, when he comes back to the States, can probably emphasize to the African American community. So, in terms of economic policy, I would say that Boakai is a little bit better on economic policies. Not too different because most of these Liberian politicians don't have really succinct economic policies. They're just, we're tired of the status quo. We're tired of, or, we want to help build the economy, but there's no, succinct like, or concrete economic plans. But I would trust Boakai because he was in the Ministry of Agriculture, because he has worked under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf that saw the most amount of growth in Liberia, that he would at least be better in terms of stabilizing the economy, growing the economy. I think that Boakai is better in terms of that regard because, again, Weah was incompetent. He fuel shortages, economic downswings, mismanagement. I would expect Boakai to do a little bit better. I just expect Boakai to do a little bit better on the economy.
Cool. Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
How you doing, family?
I'm good, brothers. What's good?
We are doing great. We have discussed the background on the presidential election, the results that came out from the National Election Commission. Of course, Boakai won the election, 50.6% of the vote to Weah's 49.4%.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Boakai is probably won a lot more votes than what we saw because it was massive fraud. The first round of the election, there's massive fraud. Second round, massive fraud. So what ends up happening is in the second round, in the last minute ditch effort, Liberia avoided what happened in Sierra Leone, which is they tried to protect as many of the people's votes as possible. Nobody's really talking about this, but it's important to understand that this election was almost hijacked by the ruling party. The reason people are so jubilant in the streets is because they were aware of that. And they were able to pull together at the very last minute and secure enough of the votes that it was enough to tip Boakai over the edge. But there was massive fraud in a lot of the counties that are not easily accessible. I did hear you say that people in Grand Crew voted for Weah because he's from there. George Weah is from Montserrado. George Weah is from Montserrado County. George Weah is of the Cloud, or as people say, the Crew ethnic group. Grand Crew County was created after he was born. It is not, these are just administrative boundaries. This man is a Liberian citizen born and raised in Montserrado County. This whole ethnic thing it is what it is, but really and truly, Weah could not survive for 30 days in Grand Crew County. That is not where he's from. That's where he has roots, generational roots, but he is from Montserrado. He's from the city. He's an urban guy. He's not the country giant. He's the ghetto giant, and it's how he conducted himself when he got there. So he ain't no country boy. I'm more of a country girl than Weah is a country boy. So let's get that straight. Our current president is from the streets. He's from the hood. And so this is just all like a political facade. And while I will agree that there may have been some ethnic component to this, I saw him in Grand Crew County getting booed. Okay, I saw him getting booed by people from Crew County. I saw him getting booed, his people getting booed in Maryland. So I don't even think he really got all those votes. So the fraud started with the census data. They increased the population in those leeward counties that are difficult to assess by an outrageously statistically impossible amount. There's no way people are having babies in greater numbers in those wayward counties than in the urban areas. I mean, they just like the population tripled and quadrupled, from the previous census. And in other places, it only grew like 15%. So that's where the fraud started. Pretend that there's more people there and then create more votes. And the elections commissioner also said that there were more votes cast than there were registered voters in some of those precincts in those counties. So you have to understand all of this to know why Liberians were jubilating the way they were. Because they almost stole the election. And as Malcolm said, it's the ballot or the bullet. If you look at what happened in Sierra Leone last night, because it's widespread belief that Matabio did the same thing, now they attempted a coup. They're in the streets shooting guns in Sierra Leone last night because when you steal elections, that's what happens. So kudos to Liberians for pulling together and being able to salvage enough votes to turn the tide of history and basically save the state from what was inevitable. And this pretense that Weah is somehow gracefully bowing out, I mean, he's doing so under tremendous pressure. I'm not going to get into all the details, but there's a lot of things that people are discussing. Amnesty, promises of amnesty from prosecution. Just give up, homie. Give up and we won't prosecute you. You and your wife get amnesty, and that's it. So he's going to play the role because he doesn't want to get prosecuted. There's nowhere to hide in this world, when you're former head of state. George Weah can't hide anywhere. Maybe he goes to the Solomon Islands somewhere and try to fit in, but so he's got to play the role, and I appreciate that's happened and that ECOWAS stepped in and helped with the peaceful transition. Former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Amara Khan, and the whole technical team that helped to salvage the votes in Montserrado and other counties. It's a great thing. It's a great thing, and I'm thankful. So I just wanted to share that. But Boakai is going to be the president. He's going to put people that can, that went to school and can read and write into positions of power, unlike Weah, who had people like Jefferson Koji as a mayor and speak, let alone read and write. So there's a lot of good things coming out of this. I'm proud of the country. I'm proud of the Liberian people. The icing on the cake would be for Weah to arrest Koji on his way out, because he knows more about his crimes than anybody. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful to Liberians, and I mean, I'm not. I'm optimistic. I'm realistic also. This is not going to be the salvation of the nation. This is not going to solve all of Liberia's problems. But the optimism comes in that I know Boakai personally, and I know that he recognizes competence and talent. He has his shortcomings, which I don't. I'm not going to get into right now. We'll see those things as time unfolds them. But I'm glad at least we're going to have a city mayor that can read and write. We're going to have government officials who actually are capable of doing the jobs that they're asked to do. That's a first step. Instead of just having the homeboys from the hood that were there with you when you're playing football, whether they went to school or not. Here you get to be a minister. Everybody gets to be a minister. All your old buddies used to go to session with, puff pass with. You put them in charge of a country. That's what Weah did. All his ex-girlfriends and people that he, whatever. You get to be the protocol head. You get to be this. It's just ridiculous. No respect for the country. I'm still jubilating. I went out dancing the other night. I never did. I was like, man, shoot. Liberia's been through some stuff, but that Weah administration, good Lord. That was I don't think we've ever sunk that low. I mean, during a time of peace. We've never sunk that low during time of peace in the entire history of the country. It was like tyranny of the it was like a criminal tyranny, like tyranny of like everything that is wrong with society. You take it and you empower it. horrible time for Liberia. So I'm grateful. Sorry to go on my monologue, y'all, but I had to express that. I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Well, actually, I was curious to hear from the both of you. Like, what do you think? What do you envision an administration under this man to be like? Like, what policy do you think is going to be put forward? Or am I being too highbrow?
I don't think that this is even going to be. I mean, Jabari, you want to go first? Sorry, I've been running my mouth. You go ahead.
Yeah, so as I stated earlier, I think that this administration is going to be an upgrade, but it's not going to be it's not going to be radically changed. I would say that Boakai, he has a plan, but it's not detailed. Like, yes, he wants to improve the economy, but if we were to sit down with him and ask, can you give us the 5 steps of what you plan to do to the economy? I don't think Boakai would be able to give us a clear, succinct 5-point plan. So I think, yes, he has more experience in that he's not going to make a train wreck of the economy. He's going to actually, think things a little bit through. But I'm not expecting this radical altering from day one. He knows what he's going to do. He has an agenda. It's clearly outlined. People know what it's about, and he's going to go with it. I'm not expecting that. I'm just expecting, can you not sink the economy? Can you not take us to the bottom of the ocean? Can we at least float to see another day?
Right. So I worked with Boakai while he was vice president, and he's a personal friend of my mother's and my late father's, and his wife is a wonderful human being, very philanthropic. Even when he was no longer vice president, she was still reaching out, very involved in the Lutheran Church. I mean, these are decent citizens. Besides his political service over history, he's a decent human being. Lived his life in a decent manner. This is a man who raised a nuclear family. I have to say these things just because of what we came from. You got a situation where 2 of George Weah's baby's mothers were in the opposition against him. Call Me Gono and Magdala Cooper have children, each have a child for this man, and they went against him in the opposition. They were in opposition, and Magdala Cooper campaigned day and night against the father of her child. If it tells you what kind of character he was. I mean, even like if you think about it, I don't care how mad you are at your baby's daddy, if he's president, somehow you're going to think your child's going to benefit, right? But these women were like, this is a horrible human being, and look at what he's doing to the country. They know more about him than we do. Boakai has been decent. Boakai has been consistent. Boakai has not been radical. Boakai has not been a change agent. Boakai has not been a revolutionary-minded person. He has been a quiet, soft, compliant, respectful, stable, almost obedient, citizen. So I'm not expecting radical change. What I'm expecting from Boakai is normalcy, stability. He's going to seek out competence. He's going to restore some form of order. Is he going to drastically change anything? No, this is not who he is. Right? He's not going to come out here on some old Pan-African vibe. He's like, we'll our international partners, which doesn't include, Jamaica or Haiti, right? It includes, France and all of these people. So I'm not expecting anything radical from him, but knowing him personally, he's not a criminal, which is sad that I have to say this, but he's not a criminal. He's not going to go in there and loot. I worked with his son, Jojo, when I worked for Maritime. He was in administration when I headed Coastal and Inland Waterways. So Jojo, hopefully Jojo doesn't behave like Robert Sirleaf did under President Sirleaf. I hope he allows his father to conduct his business and he stays out of politics and stays out of government and just retains his status as a private citizen. That's my hope, and that's what I'm going to hope that Jojo does. That would be the only thing I would see as a little bit concerning, is if his son, starts to interfere. Other than that, I don't think that anything drastic or eventful is going to happen. I think he's going to try everything he can to restore a good, stable education system. I think he's going to do everything he can to definitely empower law enforcement and make sure that some of the well-trained, well-prepared law enforcement personnel head places like DEA and the Liberian National Police. DEA is our Drug Enforcement Administration. So I'm very hopeful in the sense of, and optimistic in the sense of stability. I do not expect anything radical to happen. I do know that he's going to stabilize the country, and that's all Liberians are looking for. To stop this kleptocracy or whatever they call it, where you just have everybody just there stealing and doing crazy stuff. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, if he can find competent people for the positions, then that's about as best as we can hope for.
Right. And there's a
So
lot of
that's a win.
Yeah. One of the challenges we have, Mark, is do competent people want to go to Liberia and serve?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, President Sirleaf did a really good job after the war and after, the interim government, when she was the first democratically elected president, basically since Talbert. When she came in, Charles Taylor actually was democratically elected. Let's take that back. But she came in and she tried to stabilize the country. And she did what's called repatriation of technocrats. So they were supposed to come back, and then lots and lots of people went to Liberia for short term, 6 months, a year, to do what's called the technology transfer, mentor new people. A lot of them got tired of it and left, right? It's just a difficult environment to work in. So people were like, this is nonsense. And they left. I mean, I left. I'm as diehard as I am. I'm going to put the onus on myself. I left. So a lot of people just said, you know what? I got to take care of my children. Some people said, you know what? I can't allow my career to die in this place. I need to, so people make really hard decisions. And they left. And a lot of those same people, we're a very small country. We don't have a lot of citizens. So Boakai's going to have to call on those same people to return. And most of them don't want to.
Mm.
And I've spoken to a lot of people. Hey, you're going to go back and help? Are you going to go back to help? I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not trying to help, recruit some of y'all to go back. I already did my time, It's really hard. People are doing their stuff. They're in their 40s and 50s now. Back then, we were in our 30s, People are getting older. They're trying to plan for their own retirement. And if you're not a criminal, you don't want to go in that environment because it's not going to lead to much for you. It's a hard situation. You've got medical doctors and all kinds of people that don't want to leave a $250,000, $300,000 annual income to go to Liberia and make a few $100s. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense, So I mean, we've got a tropical disease specialist, a personal friend of mine, part of Save the State, working at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. He doesn't want to go back. He's thinking about his kids. And so how do we transition our mindset, and try to be innovative and create the kind of an economy and environment that's conducive for talented people to return to? Because right now, Liberia is not there yet. So we have a responsibility to make it be what we need it to be. And it can't just be one or two people. We got to have a strategic team and we got to do the work. Nobody's trying to, go out on their own on a limb and risk everything. You got to have support.
So true. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot.
Good.
It's like how do you get the talent over there?
For me, I think it's gonna start. It starts with like the few of us. It really starts with the few of us. I mean, it's not people are not going to get up organically by themselves. Like it has to be sort of that drive within us that we sort of set that blueprint, sort of at least try to make it happen. so that more people can get energized. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. I remember that phrase, Paula, that you said in one of your videos on your channel. Nationhood does not occur by osmosis. It's
Right.
not going. A nation is not going to build itself just naturally or just come at ease. You have to want it. You have to desire it. You have to build it, and that's sort of how we're gonna honestly
Yeah.
be. People have to be those educated ones that go and make a little of a difference, so that it can then trickle down.
Yeah. I remember that video. I said nationhood is intentional. And that's so true.
Plan and execute.
You got to have the ingredients. You know, as you said before, you can't just have a bunch of ingredients, throw it together, and think an edible dish is going to be created. It's got to be organized. It's got to be proportional. It's got to be the right amount for the dish to come out correct. And that's what we're building. We're building that dish. We're getting the ingredients. We're getting everything in the right amount, and then we're making a dish.
Yeah. So true.
I will say, and I will ask everybody on here, what do you think of the international reaction? The reactions from Peter Obi. I know that might not seem significant, but like people like Peter Obi or the ECOWAS or African Union, Bola Tinubu, do y'all see that as any significance, something to be proud of? I see it that way a little bit, but what do you guys think about it? I just want to know what y'all think about the reactions that other nations in Africa have reacted to it.
Sounds like they're glad he's gone too. Can you blame them?
The brother Baruti Katembo, I would like to have him come on. I think his question is a very interesting one. He wants to know what Boakai's stance is on African American diaspora engagement in Liberia. So please come on. Let's talk about that. That's a very, very important question. I'm not going to answer it until you come on. I know the answer, but I'm not going to answer it until you come on. So please come join us. So, Jabari, to your point about the international community stance, these people know why they're congratulating Ria in this, because they know what they very narrowly escaped in Liberia, which was going to be either we have remained president, CBC remained in power by hook or crook. That if they couldn't fraudulently win the election, it would have caused violent chaos and remained in power. So this is not all of this congratulatory stuff and stroking his ego and trying to make him, exit as a hero as opposed to the villain he actually is. It's just politics and propaganda. I mean, the whole, the kumbaya, it's really to keep people appeased. And I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad everybody, even the violent, car driving accidentally into a crowd of people jubilating about the election victory and killing 3 and injuring, I think, 15 others. That was said to be an accident, right? And everyone should just accept that it's an accident and nothing to see here. Family members aren't coming out and saying anything. Here's some money. Go bury your dead. Nobody's complaining. This is what you do. This is what governments do to keep the peace. And I'm struggling right now to determine if I feel that that's correct or not. My bureaucratic mind is saying that's absolutely necessary. And my just mind is saying, to actual heck with that. There's part of me that's saying, let's tell the truth. Let's bust everything out. Whatever happens, happens. And the other part of me is like, well, we gotta keep the peace at all costs. But it's a situation. I'm not wise enough, I think, to handle it the way that these people, these leaders are handling it. Making people to believe that it was an accident.
It definitely, I don't believe it was an accident. You don't mow a car through people. That's intentional. That's intentional. That ain't no accident.
And what is that supposed to accomplish?
What's supposed to accomplish?
Like to just doing that, like what does that accomplish?
It was an act of terrorism. It was an act of terrorism and intimidation. And also, they want to provoke violence. They want to provoke a violent response. Because
Mm.
as long as we are as president until the turning over, if there's a situation of destabilization of extreme violence, guess what? He can call a state of emergency and suspend everything and remain in power.
Mm.
There's all kinds of stuff that can go on. Or it's just an act of terror, an act of revenge. I'm angry that, we weren't able to steal the election, so we'll just kill some of y'all. And the person who drove the car was one of the CDC militia guys. He's like, he shut down his Facebook page, but not before everyone could get pictures of him in his CDC, regalia, standing up in his little militant uniform. So now it's like the citizens are aware that this wasn't normal. They know, but they're being subdued by their own leaders. Boakai saying, "Hey, let it go," because he's, that's what leaders are supposed to do to keep the peace. It's not even just to thwart justice, but to just basically, it's the history of Liberia. You have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission instead of justice, instead of prosecution. And they give amnesty to warlords in exchange for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So these warlords that did all these things in Liberia can never be prosecuted. The government knows that. All the legal minds know that. Rational citizens know this. Yet they're calling for a war crimes court. It will not be retroactive. If you install a war crimes court, it's going to be for future war crimes. So if the legislature's already given all these warlords amnesty and you install a war crimes court, you can't go back and prosecute people who did something before the law was passed. Common sense. But politically, people are like, oh, we're going to bring war crimes court just to appease the citizens. When they know good and well that people sat there with the international community and gave all these mercenaries and warlords amnesty in exchange for this BS Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's the same kind of mentality. Let bygones be bygones. There's nothing to see here. This is what they do. This is what they do. It's so I understand the thinking because it's something they've been doing for some time, but I struggle with this. I really struggle.
And to me, what you said that's really disgusting. I know it's really, like you said, a lack of justice and really a lack of dignity for the people. That your goal is not, I care about the people, or I'm doing this in the best interest of the people. Your response is, I'm doing this because I want to save my back.
What is that noise?
I think yeah. So for me, I think that is very troubling and disgusting, because essentially, that those people who cause those crimes, there will never be any ounce of justice. There won't be an ounce of justice. There won't. I mean, it's like we just have to stomach that they're there. We just have to make do with the fact that they're there. We just have to make do and accept it. And that's a tough pill to swallow. That you gotta treat these warlords like they your brother and your sister now.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the insult to injury is people pretending that if they do a war crimes court, it'll be retroactive. That for me is the biggest, most. That's the insult to injury. You have these people running around talking about, oh, we in favor of war crimes court, knowing very well that it will not. That laws are not retroactive. You can't pass a law today and prosecute someone under that law for doing something that wasn't illegal at the time. So it's just silly and very disrespectful.
Is that for Rudy?
Yes, it is.
Yes. I guess I'm Jumbo. Hello to everybody on the panel. Good to be with you. I feel honored to be amongst such illustrious guests. And so, Ms. Fambule, I am here. I am Baruti. So I took your invitation.
Good.
So you would address my question. So thank you very much.
You are welcome, brother. So I read your question, but I'd like you to ask it because I think it's a very important question.
Okay.
That deserves attention.
Okay. So I'll sort of ask it again, but maybe I might add a little additive into it. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what I was asking was what is President Boakai's stance on the African diaspora engagement and also associated dual citizenship for so-called African Americans? And I asked that question within the context of the engagement piece, as in the transfer of resources, whether it be time, talents, technologies, to benefit Liberia, as well as to build greater leverage, perhaps for African Americans within the United States, and would dual citizenship for African Americans outright be a gateway to doing that, given that you mentioned, I believe, directly that there was some slowdown in even Liberians of the diaspora wanting to go back to Liberia on a physical level to contribute to the upgrowth of the country.
So Liberia, for most of its history, from the moment of independence until 1977, has had automatic dual citizenship, not only for African Americans but for all people of the African diaspora, and continental Africans have always, from 1847 to 1977, been citizens of Liberia as far as the Liberian Constitution is concerned. So that's something that a lot of people don't understand or know because, for obvious reasons. But what happened in and I'm giving you this background because it's important. In 1977, when Talbert was president, Talbert became president after President Tubman died in 1971. When Talbert became president, this is the height of the Cold War era. And the Cold War, as you all know, was very hot in Africa. It was violent, especially in Southern Africa. And you had a lot of exiles from these places like Rhodesia at the time, which is now Zimbabwe, and South Africa, and all these places. And Talbert was inviting them to come to Liberia and get their passports. And you know what? If your country will not allow you to get a passport, come to Liberia, you're Liberians. So now something that has always been part of Liberia has now become very political, where these anti, establishment or anti-imperialist radicals from Southern Africa are now coming into Liberia in groves and getting Liberian passports and basically getting asylum in Liberia. So what USAID and other forces that were in Liberia, and I used to say forces because they had their whole spy network built at what they call the Omega Tower on Liberian soil. It was from Liberian soil that they were monitoring the rest of the world. US used Liberia as a strategic spy base from 1944 until the 80s. But they decided to sponsor a law reform where they passed this bill called the Citizenship and Naturalization Act in 1977, where they reversed this and said, and again, this law goes against the Constitution, but I'll tell you what the law basically says, that in order for you to be a Liberian citizen, and this is again sponsored by the US government, enacted by, my late father-in-law, godfather, Dr. Amos Sawyer, and others, Pearl Brown Bull, all these Pearl Brown Bulls still alive. Dr. Sawyer died a year ago. These people signed off on this being sponsored by USAID to basically say that your father had to have been born in Liberia. Father had to be not born in Liberia, but had to be a Liberian citizen in order for you to be a Liberian citizen. This law was passed in 1977. It completely contradicts the Constitution. And anything that contradicts the Constitution is not really a law. But they didn't care about that. I mean, these are brilliant people. Pearl Brown Bull used to be, she's a lawyer, brilliant woman. Dr. Amos Sawyer, Dr. Amos Claudia Sawyer, the late brilliant man. Why they signed up on this law, I don't know. You say bullied them. I don't know what the sponsorship was for the law, but they basically made it impossible for you to go to Liberia, even if you're born in Liberian soil and you're Black, to be a Liberian citizen if your father was not. Really ridiculous law. So what ends up happening is it adversely affects people from Guinea, people from neighboring countries who typically would have migrated to Liberia and instantly been Liberian. This is the era that Joseph Boakai grew up under. Okay. The next thing is this law was challenged in 2021. In 2021, this law was challenged, and the Supreme Court of Liberia said the law is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court of Liberia said the Constitution does not, it supersedes any law that contradicts it. So a man of Fulani descent whose father was born in Guinea, he was born in Liberia and was denied Liberian citizenship, said, no, I'm a Liberian, I was born here. The Constitution says this is a Negro clause. It doesn't say anything about your father. Why are they making a law that contradicts the Constitution? He becomes a Liberian citizen. The Supreme Court says, yep, this law is BS. It should have stopped there. It should have stopped there, because once the Supreme Court says that the Constitution makes you, Jabari, Mark, Vic, Deontay, all of you are Liberian citizens if you go back to Liberia. That's what the Constitution says. Supreme Court upheld this in 2021. Unfortunately, there's another referendum that's passed called the Dual Citizenship Act. That referendum was supposed to create a second-class citizenship for people who were not Liberian citizens, where you can technically be a Liberian citizen, but you're not allowed to run for office. You're not allowed to hold high-level government positions. It's just a bunch of nonsense, which basically strips your citizenship rights from you. And they wanted to put this in the Constitution through referendum. We campaigned heavily against it. We said it's not even necessary. The Constitution already gives you dual citizenship. This is nonsense. The citizens voted it down, and rightfully so. But because it's called the Dual Citizenship Act, a lot of Liberians in the diaspora ignorantly were in support of it. It was not dual citizenship. It was like a second-class citizenship act. Really ridiculous. How can you vote but not run for office? So it's nonsense. Also contradicts the Constitution. The legislature then, against the will of the people, passed this into the Constitution by a 2/3 majority vote. So now, as it stands, our Constitution says that you can have dual citizenship, but you will not have all the powers and privileges of a regular Liberian citizen, even if you were born on Liberian soil and obtained citizenship during the war in the United States or some other country. So the long-winded answer to your question is, Boakai is going to be following whatever the law says. He's not a radical. He's not a change agent. He's not going to say, well, this law doesn't make sense, and he's just going to go along with it, because that's the kind of person he is. But it is the responsibility of citizens like myself to stand up to this. What his administration is going to afford us is an opportunity to voice our concerns, and he's going to listen. See you later. Sorry. He's going to listen to our concerns, and also some of the people who are going to be put into positions of authority are going to listen to our concerns. We have senators like Amara Kane. We have some new representatives like Mr. Tolles, who are very enlightened. Hopefully they can listen to this, and then we can really convince people to reverse this very ridiculous law. Whether they call it dual citizenship or not, that's not what it actually is. So Boakai's position is not going to be a radical change agent. Is he welcome and open to the diaspora? Of course he is. As far as the laws that facilitate repatriation, he's going to have to be, this is going to have to be brought to his attention. And we're going to, but the good thing is he's intelligent. And when you bring things to the attention of intelligent people, they will accept the information. So we have that in favor. So thank you for your question, and sorry for the long-winded answer, but I wanted to give the history of it.
Thank you. May I ask as one question just for my clarification, if I may? I wanted to make sure that I heard you right on an earlier point. Were you suggesting again, if I heard you right, that the 1977 law that basically stopped anybody from being able to get a passport in Liberia who was not born on Liberian soil was basically something at the behest of the U.S. government to basically create statelessness, if I can use such a term, for African people who were fighting against apartheid in former Rhodesia and South Africa?
Yes, that was part of the motivation, a big part of the motivation for the USAID sponsored law, because Liberia was becoming an asylum for these people. And interesting enough, that's exactly what Liberia's 1847 Constitution Declaration says. Liberia is an asylum. Jabari, what's the exact words? Liberia is an asylum for it's an asylum from grinding oppression. Sorry, I didn't want to misquote Hillary Teague. Liberia is an asylum from the most grinding oppression. So it's an asylum for African people. And so that's been the mantra of the country from 1847 to 1977.
Why did there have to be, let me ask something else in another way. Why did there have to be a law at the behest, say, of the U.S. to forbid basically passports being given to African people from different places in Southern Africa who were freedom fighters against apartheid, like I say, in Rhodesia, South Africa, and I guess Namibia as well at the time? Why did there have to be a law put in place when in places like in Zambia, under Dr. Kaunda's rule, he gave asylum to various groups who were fighting against apartheid in neighboring countries to Zambia, even at the peril of Zambia being bombarded with bombs from Rhodesia and South Africa? He just gave them asylum without a law, period. So why did Liberia have to be under a situation, or why were they coerced into having a law that forbade the passports when they could have just given asylum without a law, regardless whether the Africans were citizens?
So asylum is different from citizenship. Asylum and citizenship are not the same thing. People still got asylum after 1977. Citizenship is giving you a country to call home. Citizenship is it is divorcing you from the country of your oppression and giving you a new home. It's a different level, a much greater level. And now you fall under you're not only a guest seeking refuge, you are now a citizen of this state. And a citizen with all the rights and privileges of other citizens. That's extremely powerful. That wasn't happening anywhere else on the African continent.
Okay.
I have a friend whose father sought asylum in Kenya. He was still a South African in Kenya.
Okay. All right. So,
and then also the United States, the presence of the United States, the military base and everything in Liberia gave them a special leverage in Liberia that they didn't have in other countries. They don't have that kind of relationship with Zambia. They don't have that kind of relationship with Kenya. Right? These are British colonies, British protectorates. So the Americans operate differently, and this was their tactic.
Okay. All right. So thanks for making that point clear. Now, another point I wanted to ask then. All right. So that's the first time that I have heard about the law you were talking about how it came into being as a response basically to the U.S. trying to force statelessness essentially for apartheid freedom fighters or anti-apartheid freedom fighters. All right, so given that that's the genesis of the law, then what would it take now for that law, or the genesis of it, to be brought to light, given that you have articulated the history, and then to perhaps overturn that, given that that was a law, like an imperial law, that the government at the time of Liberia succumbed to, basically to force statelessness on other Africans. It seems like the genesis for the law is fraudulent, number one, but given that it is a law, should not people know the genesis of the law, as you have talked about it, as a first step or one of a series of steps for overturning something that was like a colonial imposition onto the country itself?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court already said the law was unconstitutional.
Okay, so if it's unconstitutional, then does that mean the law is no longer on the books, or it's still on the books but it's not
Once the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional, it's no longer a law.
Okay, so now there's no longer a law. Then the question about the dual citizenship should be a situation where that is the case.
So they have a dual citizenship law that a referendum to change the Constitution. And as I said, we fought against it and made sure that dual citizenship act was that the citizens voted against it, and they did successfully vote against it because it's called dual citizenship, but what it in fact was second-class citizenship. What it did was it gave you, as a diaspora African, the right to dual citizenship, but it stripped you of the right to run for office. It stripped you of the right to hold government positions of authority. So you couldn't hold any ministerial post. You couldn't hold any leadership roles in government. So we said, this doesn't make any sense. Citizens are citizens. You can't tell citizens to vote, but they can't run for office. It makes no sense. So we told citizens, do not accept this. The Constitution already allows dual citizenship. Essentially, nothing should have happened. Once the Supreme Court said that the 1977 law was illegal, they should have left it alone, which meant that you could still go home to Liberia and be a Liberian. But somebody very sinister comes up with this ridiculous bill, because most people don't think things through. They just hear, oh, dual citizenship, that's a good thing. What the Supreme Court has said is, hey, you're already a dual citizen per our Constitution. So now they have changed the Constitution to define dual citizenship as different from regular citizenship, which is ridiculous.
Okay. So let me, if I may, let me keep following this. Okay, all right. So you're telling me that they tampered with with what it meant to be a citizen. So that essentially, the voting for whatever the law that you mentioned that came about made dual citizenship like a second class citizenship that disallowed you from being able to vote.
No, you can vote. You can vote. You just can't run for office.
So you can't run for office.
You can be a citizen,
Okay.
but you
You
can't
can pay taxes, but you can't run for office, and you can't hold leadership roles in government.
Okay, you can't hold leadership roles in government, can't run for office. Okay. All right. So why is it that we are led to believe, even with that Liberia does not offer dual citizenship?
I don't know.
What I'm saying is, when I've heard about the situation with Liberia, regardless of the constructs in the law that you can't run for office or hold positions of leadership, that's not the way that I generally heard it. I heard it as, Liberia doesn't really offer dual citizenship to African people who are not immediately from the so-called Liberian diaspora.
Okay, let me break it down in a different way and compare it, because you're American. So I'm going to compare it to America's Constitution. America doesn't allow dual citizenship either, technically, because America's silent on the issue of dual citizenship. The Constitution is silent on it. What the American Constitution does is it recognizes its citizenship. It could give a rat's tail what other people consider you. If Germany considers you a citizen, that's Germany's business. As far as America is concerned, you're an American citizen. It was the same thing with Liberia. This concept of dual citizenship is foreign to Liberia, because if Liberia considers you a citizen, it doesn't really care what other country considers you a citizen, just like the American Constitution, completely silent on this issue. You're a citizen of America, you're a citizen of America. They don't care if Germany considers you a citizen. If you naturalize in America, you're now an American citizen. You take an oath, you become an American citizen. Whether Germany has relinquished your citizenship or not is irrelevant. That's how Liberia has always been. This idea of dual citizenship, I think, comes from us either mimicking other African countries, mimicking other countries, or thinking that people don't want to let go of the citizenship of their other country. And that's what's making it an issue. But Liberia, as any other country, shouldn't really care. Once we recognize that you're a citizen, period, full stop. There's no category of that. The only caveat to this is birthright citizenship versus naturalization. But there's no such thing really in the Liberian Constitution as a dual citizen. You're either a citizen of Liberia or you're not. So I think we get caught up on this term that is completely foreign to Liberia.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So,
I mean, think about it. The American Constitution, I mean, use it as an analogy to the United States. America doesn't talk about dual citizenship because it makes no sense in the context of American citizenship. You're an American, period.
Well, I don't even know what an American is, but okay.
An American citizen is a person who has a social security number, has an American passport, and is allowed to vote.
No, that's not what I mean.
It's like that's,
No, what I mean is,
it's a legal status.
What I mean is, I think the country is actually the United States. I'm not trying to be funny. I think that a United States citizen is different than an American. So when you say just an American, I think of a white person, a descendant of colonialists. Yes, and that's what it meant. So being a United States citizen to me is not the same as an American. The word American itself. Now, okay, but I wanted to point that out because I don't think that the Black people or the African people that's in the United States have ever been regarded as an American, period. So I wanted to point that out. We can get into a longer discussion about that.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I understand your point of view.
Now, but all right, so you made a valid point about the term dual citizenship is used in large ways because it's thought that becoming a citizen of another country at the same time not wanting to let go of the citizenship that you had in a prior country. Okay, fine. So what has been the confusion then about whether the African diaspora people could become a citizen of Liberia, regardless as to whether or not they kept or retained or let go of the citizenship that they had in another geopolitical space? Has there been a confusion about that?
I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of African Americans who moved to Liberia as adults and became Liberians and carry Liberian passports. The United States of America is a very powerful country. Having a U.S. passport anywhere in this world gives you a lot of privileges and gives you a lot of protection, even if you're an African person.
Right.
So I do know that there are many. I mean, this episode is really supposed to be about Boakai, but we kind of gone sideways. But there are many people. Reverend Moja, for example, who I worked with when I was in Liberia, went to Liberia in the 1970s. Elderly African American man from Chicago. He's elderly now. He wasn't elderly when he went to the Republic in the 19. I think no, he went to Liberia in like 1968. That brother's been there for a long time. So when he went to Liberia as a young man, he became a Liberian. He became a Liberian, carried a Liberian passport, and was living his life as a Liberian man. It wasn't until very recently that he came back to the States and had to go through a whole process to return for his health. It's not. And then, I mean, the whole Hebrew Israelite movement. Those brothers stopped off in Liberia when they were on their way to Israel. They lived in Liberia for a while, and remember where I'm from. And they had children, and some of those children remained there. Those children legally are American citizens. I know one of them very well. He doesn't want his American citizenship. It's not that people don't go back. When you do get sworn in, if you go to Liberia, one of the things you do is just like when you naturalize the United States, is that you take an oath of loyalty to that country, and you part of your swearing in is you're relinquishing your other citizenship in a sense. It's a formality. It's a verbal thing. You're not doing it necessarily on paper, but because you do that, because you're renouncing all the other countries, it is assumed at that point that you're just a Liberian, and that's all.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. At the want to thank everybody for the time. I see on the private chat here, Vic Shepard says means we have to lobby. So I assume that means some kind of formal lobby group to lobby about the citizenship issue or the other issues. As I get off the panel, perhaps that can be talked about in general. What would it take to create a lobby group? Or maybe that's not what Big Shepard meant, but he said that means we have to lobby. So maybe we should talk about that. But thank you very much for your time and everybody on the panel. And thank you, Miss Bambule, for addressing my question. Thank you.
All I was saying was that it was just like Sister Phone they said earlier. We could talk to the new president. That's all I was saying when I meant we should lobby. That's all I meant. We don't have to do. We can engage him. You said you know him personally, so it's not. We're not trying to overturn Roe v. Wade.
I see Boca as an opportunity because even because I said earlier, I said this earlier in the beginning of the live. I said Boca was that one president that said, Barack Obama isn't the first, African American president. I remember him seeing that quote back when I was 2016, 2017, when he was mentioning, Stephen Allen Benson and Joseph Jenkins Roberts and those before. I mean, mentioning the connection between African Americans and Liberia. So he has some awareness. He's obviously, like you said, not going to radicalize or change, the laws, but we could slowly, for surely, as we're building, get in his ear and influence him, or, allow him to sort of think of something he hasn't seen before. So we have opportunities. We just have to take them. That's how I see it, Boakai. And
so I want to say this. His name is Boakai. Boakai. Yeah. His name is Boakai, Joseph Boakai. So it's I guess it would pronounce it as it was spelled Boyki, Boakai. Phonetic. I mean, yeah. So the thing about Boakai is that he is very or was. I mean, God, he's going to be the actual president now. But when he was vice president, he was very accessible. You know, he gave people an audience. I mean, I used to spend hours venting and ranting to this brother, you know, and he sits there and he listens to you. Like, you know, he doesn't get out of my office, quit complaining, go do your work. You know, no, it's like sit and listen to me rant and complain about how crazy everybody was and how I was going to, you know, pull my hair out. He would just sit there and just listen, and he would say, well, we've been trying all we can do to make this a more conducive work environment. And thanks for sharing all of this with me. I'll consider it, and that'll be it. And I'm like, what? I just told you the sky's falling. Like, you know, he's just always calm. So I think he's still like that. I think he's still, you know, approachable and accessible. And just because someone has been uplifted to this level doesn't mean that they're going to change, because being a vice president is also a very powerful position. And he's a traditional African man, very traditional African man. And so there's a lot of ways that he's going to conduct himself because he's steeped in that tradition. So there's a way that they hold power, in a way that they conduct themselves. The type of dignity that comes with. Is something to be admired. So
that's great to hear. I love that. Just you know, having that tradition and not just being a train wreck and you know, embarrassing the country and wilding out, or you know, leaving the country, go see your son play for another country, and you
and your wife waving the U.S. flag while you're a sitting president. I mean, what an obnoxious group of people, man. Good riddance. Good riddance.
I saw that. I'm just sitting here like the whole time.
I can't look this woman. God, man, you know, when people were dragging her and how First Lady's Jamaican, you know, as a Pan Africanist, I was like, this is a good thing for Liberia. She's a Pan African. I mean, she's a Jamaican. We're gonna have exchange with Jamaica. She's gonna be like the ex-official ambassador to the Caribbean. We're gonna have technology transfer. We're gonna see Liberians going to UE, to the University of West Indies. We're gonna have UE people going to the University of Liberia. It's gonna be great. She gets there. First thing this woman says, I'm gonna open a hair weave factory so we can stop importing hair weaves from China. They said, Carl, did you hear this lady? You've been applauding for the last 2 weeks. She wants everybody to wear a weave. You know? Look, we have suffered under these folks, y'all. Good riddance. It's been one embarrassment after another. My God, the one thing she could have done to connect the Caribbean and ECOWAS. Oh, no. This sister, good riddance.
Harry had infrastructure bill she's trying to propose.
Huh?
I said she was trying to propose the hair hat infrastructure bill.
Yeah, she's like, I'm gonna open up a hair weave factory. Thank God that was just a failure and didn't happen. I mean, can you imagine? We try to tell these sisters to take this dog hair off their heads. She want to open up a factory, an ode to self-hate. Like, get out of here. You know, next thing is gonna be a skin bleaching plant. I'm just tired, man. Good riddance. Yeah, good riddance.
Honestly, they might, you know what? That might be the one way they can get people to get into chemistry.
The science of self-degradation.
Yeah.
Trust.
Hey, we got Mr. Saley in the house.
Hey, Paul, don't be afraid. So, like to see that camera.
Don't be scared.
Put your camera back on. What's up?
Yeah, there he goes.
You sure you want to be on here with us radicals?
Yeah, you're in the lion's den now.
Let's ask him. So, yeah. Oh, I think.
I don't know if he's got volume. Trust, can you hear it? Can you say something? Let's see if we can hear you. Oh, his sound isn't on.
Hey, Paul, yeah, your sound isn't on. Your sound isn't on when you're speaking. We can't hear you. So
Maybe you're muted.
Definitely not muted.
yeah, I was say we can.
It's probably on his end.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
when he gets back on and he gets that correct, we'll let him back on.
Mikey said this is chemistry.
Yeah.
Mikey said this is chemistry.
And
Look.
we need to stop importing that hair weave from China. What about the Brazilian hair weave? We got Brazilian hair weave. We got Indian hair weave. Is
No,
it just Chinese hair
she
weave?
wanted to deal with the Chinese market. So she was like, we go manufacture our own weaves in Liberia. I mean, how you can only innovate to the capacity of your thinking, right? You can only even you want to be come on, man. The Liberian government was paying this woman $1 million a year out of their budget just for being married to Wea. And this is what she comes up with. She didn't come up with we're gonna build some libraries. She didn't come up with we're gonna, come up with a way to digitize our education platform and get some digital libraries or nothing. Oh, let's see. I like weaves. What can we do with weaves?
Not to mention, as we've talked about before, Wea's whole running was unconstitutional. I mean, again, you have Jules Taylor and George Weah from the same county. They reside in the same county, which is illegal. So
and then she's a senator from Bong County where she had not lived since the 1970s. She had not lived in Bong County since the 1970s, but she goes to Bong because she was born there, and they don't understand what residency means. They're like, oh yeah, her parents used to work at Phoebe Hospital in Banga, so she should be representing us. Like, where's her house? Where's her house? Anyway, Paul's back.
Is your mic good?
Yeah, my mic is good. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can.
All right.
So what do you
Finally
think
get to
of
see Mr. Holland face to face.
Yes, you get to see all of us face to face. So what do you think, Paul? What do you think? Tell us what you think. What do you think it's going to mean? What was your reaction to the election? Just tell us what you think.
Well, honestly, I think it's very okay, especially pertaining to agriculture, because I understand that Boakai was Minister of Agriculture in the 80s. So I want to see what would be his stance also on agriculture. I understand that he's going to put a lot of focus on other sectors in Liberia, but mainly for agriculture, I want to see what he's going to do. So I can't say further. So I just want to see first before I can say furthermore. But yeah, that's just my honest take on it.
Yeah. I have a question for y'all.
How do you think?
I got a question for all of y'all. What do you
Did you guys get that clear?
We got you, and I have a question for you and Jabari and Brother Holub and Brother Vic and Mikey, everybody. So I want to understand something. If someone was a Minister of Agriculture in the 1980s, what innovation in agriculture did you see in the 1980s that you want to see replicated in 2023?
Nothing.
In the 80s.
Like that's 40 years ago.
Especially in Liberia.
I want to see some 2023 innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also, the 1980s, that was the era of, all kinds of horror when it came to food and agriculture in the world, because people were People like Mikey who like chemistry were playing with food production indiscriminately, and then they realized, oh, we killing people. We shouldn't do this anymore. So the 80s was a horrible time in agriculture globally. We are still trying to repair the world from the disasters of the 1980s agricultural movement. So please, Boakai, keep your agricultural innovation from the 80s in the 80s. We don't want to see it again. But I think, you know, as far as Trust saying, you know, I hope he brings in some modern talent. I'm not expecting him to have the talent, except to be able to recognize the talent. So I hope he does bring in people who are modern and able to do something, you know, more innovative and more, you know. I don't think he's an expert in agriculture at all. It just doesn't. It just isn't. I'm sorry.
It's like for our American viewers, it's like Pete Buttigieg being the leader of transportation when this man has no experience in transportation. Boakai is like he's the minister of agriculture, but he's not an agricultural expertise.
He was in the context of 1985, 86, right? But he didn't stay in the industry and grow with the industry. So we can't, you know, depend on him for failed agricultural policies from the 1980s. Let's be honest. You know, that's not what he brings to the table. We got to, you know, at that time in that context, 1986 was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you were an IT expert in 1986, who's bringing you and you haven't continuously worked in IT since 1986, who's bringing you to the table today to talk about IT?
Nobody.
That's what I'm saying. We gotta quit tripping. Like, think about it.
I was in 1986. I mean, that's 37 years ago. Sheesh, man.
I wonder what he thinks about the airport.
Oh yeah, that Robertsport International Airport needs to be heavily remodeled.
Right. And this really quick before we flip, brother Baruti also just made a very important point. He's like, you know, he might not have the, you know, be able to do the transfer tech, but he should be able to hire experts, or, you know, basically is a summary of what he's saying. You know, he should be, Boakai is going to be able to recognize experts and people with the skills necessary. And that's what
that's a major win.
He himself is not, I'm not expecting he himself to have, and no leader knows everything. But I think he'll be able to recognize that agricultural technology has changed and advanced, and he'll be able to find the correct people to come in and solve problems. But I don't want agricultural skills from the 80s being applied.
I mean, rapidly. I mean, the agricultural industry, I mean, like every industry now is accelerating in change. Like you need people in there like now who are doing now, which I think, like you said, recognizing is huge.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't want Mikey playing with our food. I'm just like, well, if we change the molecular structure of this rice.
Nah, wait, that's not me at all.
I'm just.
Now, the one question that I do have that I think is important, but I don't think is probably harped on enough within Liberian politics, foreign policy or in connection to the region, abroad. I know that obviously, you know, the economy and a lot of stuff is struggling, but how do you think Boakai is going to handle relations with next door neighbors like Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, Guinea, ECOWAS, and just the broader continent and world in general?
Y'all want to tackle that? I mean, like I say, he's a traditional African man. He's very respected, even as vice president. He was one of the reasons President Salif brought him on board is because he's respectable and respectful, and he conducts himself with dignity. And so I see him being, you know, in ECOWAS, a leader, someone that people look to sit at the table and come up with solutions. He's respected. Nobody respected George. None of the leaders in ECOWAS used to. I mean, the last time I think someone came to Liberia from any of these ECOWAS countries, which is very strange, by the way, was at the last inauguration. I haven't seen Mata Bio come to Liberia. I haven't seen these people come to visit our country. And when Sirleaf was president, they were regularly in Liberia, seeking counsel, attending programs. They don't come around. They don't invite George. George goes to Ghana on leisure. Nobody invites him there. And it's horrible. It's embarrassing. He only goes to the formal events that are held for African Union and ECOWAS and UN. And that's it. Nobody calls him to sit and discuss problems in the region. So hopefully that will change with Boakai. He's going to be looked to as one of the people to sit at the table and make decisions and plan for the region. He'll be taken seriously.
Another win.
Big win.
At this point, just Boakai just existing is a win. Boakai
right. You know how embarrassing it is? All the other presidents at ECOWAS, they don't invite yours. Like, George is that guy that we having a conversation. You walk to the room, everybody gets quiet,
Oh, no.
It was bad. It's been bad, man. We've been through hell. It's been bad.
And and the way that we remember George Weah's legacy, we're gonna remember him as being the second worst or third worst president in Liberian history. Because obviously Doe and Taylor take the cake. They take the cake in terms of worst presidents. King is slightly above Weah. Charles D. King is slightly above. I would say.
I wouldn't even. I disagree, Hobie. Charles D.B. King ain't slight. He's way, way beyond me. I mean, he wasn't a nice man, but not being a nice man is different from being. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a nice guy. You can't say. Don't make me say bad things about Weah, but I wouldn't put Charles D.B. King anywhere around that brother. And in all fairness to George, other than some, threats of violence here and there, the fact that he didn't have the opportunity to really perpetuate mass violence, I wouldn't put him in a category with Doe and Taylor either. I think he's in a category all by himself. He's all like, there's no comparison in our history to him.
Mm.
Yeah, he's a Samuel Doe. Yeah, Doe and Taylor, you can put them in a bracket. Yeah, but George, he's all by himself. He's an outlier.
Yeah.
An anomaly in Liberian history.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Now I know you've heard, like I told, like I stated earlier, we know, I don't want, people will say ages, but we know Boakai's in his 80s. We know Boakai's old. I've been seeing people on Liberian Twitter refer to Joseph Boakai as Sleepy Joe, reminiscent of Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe. Obviously, there have been some health concerns. Obviously, I think Boakai is going to be cognitively there. Obviously, he's not like Biden, who doesn't even know the difference between an apple and a pomegranate and a raspberry. But do you think that is something that we should even be worried about or concerned, or hey, just let it go? He can do it. Obviously, like I said, his cognition is better than the predecessor before, but it is a concern, being in the 80s, that there is a concern that possibly that things could go south. So I just wanted to sort of bring that up.
Right.
You talk about a class and they by themselves. I put Joe Biden in that. I saw a clip of him. He said, "Now this is very important. I have something very important to tell you." And he's like, "I'll forget about it."
At least Boakai won't be like that. At least Boakai won't say that. At least.
I mean, listen. Joe Biden is a relic from the past. And I remember watching a clip of him being the only senator on the floor back in the same 70s. And when some of the same stuff that Carter had Culver assassinated for, which was talking against apartheid. He was one of the few people that stood up, that had any position of power in the United States, to challenge the U.S. government's policies in apartheid. Said, hey, we signed a treaty, and why are we still trading with apartheid South Africa? Why are we still empowering them militarily? Biden stood up and did that. So I don't get into all of this mocking someone for their age and stuff like that. I mean, we've had elders in the African community who went blind, like Dr. John Henry Clark, and started forgetting things. But you don't, if we're all blessed and lucky enough to live so long, I wouldn't want someone to degrade me for something that's beyond my control. I don't, as an African woman, there's a great taboo against us doing that to our elders, even, to older people. It's a taboo. We don't mock that kind of thing. So seeing a lot of Liberians during the last election kind of adopt this very Western, very bizarre way of just being extremely, extremely disrespectful to someone's challenges that they face with aging was strange. And that's another reason Leo was rejected, especially ANC, the Charles Cummings party, because they were mostly Americanized people, and they were just dragging Boakai for being old the way Americans drag Biden, and it didn't work. He went from getting 7% last election to 1.5% this election, and most of that is from him his people around him, his party, harping on Boakai's age and saying he's an old man. He wears a diaper. I mean, they were really, really vulgar and vile in their attacks against this man. So for me, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, any of that kind of stuff. But I look at Biden and I compare him and look at his life's work, being a white person in America and what he's done, and compared to other white men in America. And I'm just like, he's the last one we should be laughing at. Out of these people. And Boakai is older. This in an African context gives him a certain type of power. He commands a certain type of respect that others don't. We have to remember this is Africa, and we are Africans. And so whether or not he's moving slowly or not, we're looking at wisdom. We're looking at the masked judge unmasked. We're looking at the person that we're supposed to sit at his feet, and take notes from. He's seen things. There's a lot to be said about that. No matter how slowly he speaks or slowly he moves, there's something to be said about the time that he spent in this world.
Yeah, look how fast George Weah moved. So it's crazy.
Man. They talk about George can play football and run circles, and then Cummings, who isn't very young either. He was there are people that he talk about. He's fit, he's physically fit. See me jogging. Nobody has time for that. We're not looking for an Olympic athlete. We're looking at someone who's going to have the understanding and the wisdom to bring the country together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of sides to this. Is that he's been cooked in that soup of dysfunction like everyone else. But like I said, it's stability.
Yeah, that's my main takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
The stability and competence.
Exactly.
It gives us
if you can get
operate. It gives us room. It gives us an environment for us to build in. Is having that stability where we don't have to worry, hey, there might be chaos and we might not be able to show it because we might get ransacked. It's going to be, an environment where we can get the ball rolling, which again, shout out to Liberians for getting him over the hump. That's huge.
So Michael says that Boakai's 78, he'll be 79. I don't think Boakai knows how old he is, but yeah, on paper he's 78, about to be 79. I don't think the brother knows his age.
Mm.
And that's normal in Liberia for that generation to not know how old he is.
Well, he's here, and he's
I mean, I don't think he knows how old he is. How many people in Liberia from that generation had a birth certificate or parents who kept track of the time they were born? It's very rare. Not most of the population. It's a different part. Yeah, it's a different thing. You didn't track that stuff. Like, well, I'm about this old. Right? You go to Monrovia to go to school. I'm about 20 years old. Maybe he was 25.
So I guess the consensus is that it's overall a net positive.
Yeah.
I would say so. It's not the ideal situation. You know, would I want to have seen Augustus Gaffouin as president or someone else? Yes. But this is a huge improvement over what we've come from. Huge. And you know, Liberians were just desperately trying to get rid of George.
And they did, which is, again, mission accomplished. We got the first mission. We got one mission down. We have multiple. We have a lot more to do, but we got one down. We can build on that. So we got a future. We got something to believe in. You know, obviously, you know, we're approaching the hour and 40-minute mark. Obviously, you know, we don't want to keep each other on too long. Of course, you know, like, share, comment, and subscribe. You know, just give your final thoughts. You know, in summary, what do you? We've all said this is a net positive, but just, you know, if you have any last words, you know, share it. You know, and just for our subscribers, you know, what the future is for us and what we're going to be facing.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, for me, it's a net positive. Sometimes, you know, when your choice is the status quo or utter chaos, status quo is not that bad. You know, it's not bad, you know? So that's the way I'm looking at it. Like, if it's an improvement in competency, peace, and stability, I'm good.
Yeah. I agree with you, brother.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I always think of it. It's a harm reduction. It's we need somebody who's going to cause the least amount of harm, or the people who are not going to flat out just like burn everything down. We need that stability. So I see Boakai as just that stability for us to just get the ball rolling, so that 2029 we'll be in the driver's seat, and we'll be having the people that we want. So this is just that base, that bare minimum that we need to get the ball rolling. And now we have a window where we can do what we want. We've seen the results. We're already doing great work right now. And 6 years from now, it's going to be even better.
Yep.
I'm glad you cleared up those vote totals, because I was kind of concerned about that a little bit. Barely 1%. So thank you for clearing that up.
About the what?
The vote totals, because he barely won by 1%. I appreciate you coming in and clear that up.
There was massive fraud. And if there was no fraud, then there would have been a one-round election, and Boakai would have won by a landslide, is what I think. Yeah. There would have been. Yeah. So
Mikey, any last questions or any last comments?
No. I generally agree with what you guys have to say. It could be worse. You don't want to end up like some country in Hispaniola. So I'm happy for y'all, truly.
Better, bro. Haiti, it'll get better.
Yeah.
Haiti,
but yeah, I'm glad it's going well, because like that's the only like avenue where you can just like this, especially with the situation where about the land ownership thing, like it's that's like a major thing that's kind of saving Liberia for the time being, you know.
And that's the other thing that Mike, is a good point to bring up. We are really wanted to destroy that land issue.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty neutral until he started doing that, and then I put on my my fighting shoes, because that's a damn good point, brother. Land ownership. Who owns the land? That should be the first thing.
And Black people own the land, so and it
Where's
shall
all
remain.
up?
I think his mic went off. I think his signal dropped off.
Okay.
But yeah, all in all, to our viewers out there and to everybody watching, there he is. Yep, I knew his signal went out. Yep, there. All in all, this is a net positive. We have something to be relieved about for a little bit, so we can take a deep breath. We can appreciate Boakai being elected. Liberians did a great job. So proud of y'all. We got a bright future. We got a lot of work to do, but we got the environment to work in. That's all that matters for us. So thank you to everybody on. We're going to be doing more of this. We have more content coming out for you guys. You're about to see a massive, massive upgrade and upswing for what we're about to do. I'm super excited for the end of this year, what we're doing next year. Just stay tuned. Y'all are going to be blown away. I just want to read. We have a few comments. We had Baruti making some good comments as usual. And he said, I think Jabari critiqued President Biden in sharpness because he, like many Black people, don't really think that the Biden government is not really a friend. But it's just other things as well, him making, gaffes and stuff like that in public. And, I really don't want to see Biden struggling like that. We saw previously. I don't know if you guys saw it, but when he was speaking about with the Chinese leader, you could see Blinken all nervous. He's rolling back, and his eyes looking like he's about to cry, all panicky and worried. I just don't want to see that. Like I want Biden to live a long life, just not in the presidency.
It's elder abuse.
Yeah, it's like Dianne Feinstein. We all knew.
I don't think it's elder abuse. That man's there of his own volition. They need to vote for somebody else. But I mean, my thing is not to mock it. So even as a
volition,
he's there by his own free will, man. That man ran for president. This is like Boakai. They were saying the same thing. He wanted to be president. That's not.
I'm hearing rumors. This guy's like, going doo-doo on himself in the middle of a press conference. Like it's bad.
I believe the Trumpists are making up those kind of stories.
Yeah, and Trump.
I even heard Trump was doing, he was doing cocaine flat up on the, on Air Force One. He was doing lines of coke. Nobody talks about that.
All in all,
his son. You talking about Biden?
Trump.
Yeah, all in all, these leaders right now, what we got is what we got. We want better, but this is what we got. We got to make do. And Boakai is better. We can make do with that, and we can build going forward.
What we didn't talk about is his VP.
Oh, we can talk about
who's
that.
His VP?
Talk about that next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about his VP next time. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for taking this time out of your day. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you are signed up to the BIL, we have our lounge in the Discord where we chat it up. We have productive conversations. You don't want to miss that. We will be sharing this. Of course, it's going to be on YouTube, but we're going to be sharing this on TikTok and all our social medias. So the BIL is everywhere. So once again, thank you guys so much. And of course, I got to give this. Thank you to the Save the State, as y'all see in our avatar, to Save the State, doing their part in Liberia, doing their incredible work as a great call right here is a part of. She's been doing a great job with Save the State, so we cannot forget about giving a shout out to Save the State and the Liberian Leadership Academy, where we are making so much progress. And I got it on too. I had to go and get it. Yes.
I'll wear mine next week. I'll wear mine next week for sure.
Well, all right. Thank you guys so much. You guys have a great rest
of the day.
Peace, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.